Bring in show music, please.
Hi, I'm CNBC producer Katie Kramer. Today on Squawk Pod. Big Apple, big problems? New York's leadership chaos, State Governor Kathy Hochul getting involved in the city mayor's business, corruption, quid pro quo, resignations.
We're going to talk about a hostage situation this morning, the hostage being the mayor of New York City.
This city really does have it all, and we talked to one of its characters, City Comptroller Brad Lander, on what's next for Mayor Eric Adams.
I mean, it's unprecedented. You've never had a leadership vacuum like 4 deputy mayors, and these are the ones that really supervise all the critical day-to-day agencies that serve New York.
And on the national stage, a more powerful than ever White House. Donald Trump expanding presidential authority. John Yoo, law professor and former official in the George W. Bush DOJ, joins us.
But there's some of his executive orders that are pushing the limits, and I do think he's going to get a more hostile reception in the courts.
Plus, the rest of today's news that got us squawking, tariffs, Twitter, and our daily dose of Elon Musk headlines. Does it ever all worry you?
It was a constitution that was just built to last, and it really was.
It's Wednesday, February 19th, 2025. Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Ander by in 3, 2, 1. Cue Ander.
Welcome to Squawk Box here on CNBC on my birthday. We are live at the NASDAQ Market Set in Times Square. I'm Andrew Ross Sorkin along with Joe Kernan. Becky is out today. A lot going on this morning.
Now I've known you for so long. Is it 20 years probably?
Oh, yeah. I think we've known each other for probably about 20 years.
So you honestly were a young whippersnapper.
Now I'm an old non-whippersnapper.
You're at a point now with that number you gave me this morning, and we're going to get to the news in just a second, but you're at a point now where I know how young you are and how great a number that you have is, but in your view, this is a number you might not want to spread around to people, right? It's just below 50. Yep. Not just below, but getting close.
Getting closer. Closer.
That is, that is, I think that's, you've hit the nadir, and I think things start going south from here. With a lot of different parts of you. Not necessarily, but I'm just saying, I know how young that is. But you're at a point now where that's a serious age where you're hitting. And you've also got to start thinking about some of what we talk about all the time and start getting the more mature viewpoint on some of this stuff.
This is when it all goes.
That I've tried to happens. The Trump administration.
The red pilling on the birthday. That's good.
A little. No, just that you've heard that. When you're young, it's all about a bleeding heart, and then you get a little older, a little more cynical, and you see how the world really works. And right.
My grandmother made it to 103, so I'm
amazing. You're not even halfway.
And I'm hoping between all the crazy concoctions and
you get up at 3:30
stuff we do.
You get up at 3:30. You get up at 4. You'll be lucky to make 75.
Thank you.
The Trump administration. No, I'm almost there. The Trump administration scored a legal victory yesterday. A judge ruled in its favor in a case brought by Democratic attorneys general at issue the authority of Elon Musk and the DOGE team to access computer systems at federal agencies and to direct the firing of government workers. The judge said that the states legitimately call into question what appears to be the unchecked authority of an unelected individual, and an entity was not created by Congress, which has no oversight at this point. But the judge then ruled that the states had not shown why they were entitled to a temporary restraining order. Trump and Musk addressed this topic in an interview, taped with a gentleman named Sean, is it pronounced Hannity? Is that
Sean Hannity?
I haven't heard of him. That aired last night on a network called Fox.
When these attacks occur, the thing that they're accusing the administration of is what they are guilty of. They're saying that things are being done unconstitutional, but what they are doing is unconstitutional. They are guilty of the crime of which they accuse us.
That's always the first thing they do. He's in violation of the Constitution. They don't even know what they're talking. Well,
it's absurd.
Know. It's just a con job. It's a big con job.
It was not a Trump appointee either. I can't remember which, but a Democrat. Right. I can't remember which one, but a little bit interesting. It was not a, you do see sometimes, it seems like, depending on whether you're appointed by a Republican or a Democrat, sometimes it looks like it might hold some sway. But in this case, this was not appointed by Trump This was not a Trump appointed by Obama.
Appointed by Obama.
God told me in my ear.
Let's also talk about what's going on with autos, because President Trump said that he would likely impose tariffs on automobiles, semiconductors, and pharmaceutical imports of about 25%, with an announcement coming as soon as April 2nd.
It'll be in the neighborhood of 25%.
What about semiconductors and pharmaceuticals?
It'll be 25% and higher, and it'll go very substantially higher over a course of a year. But we want to give them time to come in because, as you know, when they come into the United States and they have their plant or factory here, there is no tariff. So we want to give them a little bit of a chance.
And here's Pfizer's CEO, Albert Bourla, on closing bell overtime when asked about how the broader tariffs on pharmaceuticals would impact his company.
When it comes to China, it's not affecting us. As Pfizer, we haven't any reliance on China right now, nor Canada or Mexico. We don't bring no products, not even active substances. Europe is a different story. There is significant manufacturing in Europe, as there is in the US. Don't forget that Pfizer has 14 manufacturing plants in the US. So we are waiting to see how that could play out.
Bourla and other pharmaceutical executives scheduled to have a meeting with President Trump this week, so we're going to hear a lot more about that. A law firm that represents Tesla and Elon Musk has now written proposed legislation that would alter Delaware corporate law and could pave the way for Musk's 2018 pay package to be reinstated if the law were to go through. The law firm confirmed to CNBC that it had drafted the bill, which was introduced in the Delaware General Assembly on Monday. A spokesperson saying the legislation was not drafted on behalf of any specific client, though. The pay package that Tesla granted to Musk in 2018 was the largest, if you remember, CEO compensation plan in public corporate history, with a potential $55.8 billion maximum value. But I would just say it was performance-based, meaning the stock had to hit certain metrics that nobody thought it would ever hit. Last year, the Delaware Court of Chancery ordered it to be rescinded. The judge said the Tesla shareholders were misled by the company's proxy materials before they were asked to vote on that pay package. Musk since moved the site of his incorporation for his businesses out of the state, and by the way, went back to all the shareholders and said, now that you know everything, and here's the case, you can read all about it. What do you want to do? And they still voted for it. So it's a fascinating thing to see what's happening in Delaware. And by the way, this may happen with other states too, where they're going to have to decide in terms of the economics even of the whole state. If corporations start leaving, that is a real problem. So politically, Delaware is going to probably have to shift in terms of sort of the way things are set up. It has become a super shareholder-friendly place, less management-friendly place, which is a very sort of interesting dynamic.
That's a good dynamic, you would think.
But it was famous for being a very efficient court. People liked it. Management liked it. And those judges, I mean, for the most part, they're very, very smart. They understand the issues very detailed.
When it happened, it seemed activist to me, and it just looked like what we don't want to see a lot of times from the judiciary. Thank God it was a constitution that was just built to last, Andrew. It really was. It's like amazing. So many checks and balances, and you finally get to a point where someone decides. I know maybe this isn't the ideal time for some people for the Supreme Court, but it is an amazing system. We'll see whether it can withstand this guy. The Senate I know that's what you think. The Senate confirmed Howard Lutnick to be the next Commerce Secretary. President Trump has tasked him.
I'm hopeful. Yeah. I am hopeful.
It is built. These guys. I mean, I know they had their faults, our forefathers, but they were pretty amazing. Really smart. I'm glad they were around. I'm glad we got the right guys. He's good. Lutnick. He's like kind of a protectionist at this point. But there are so many around all of a sudden with leading the administration's tariff and trade agenda. And he said he will have direct responsibility for the office of the U.S. Trade Representative. Lutnick told senators during his confirmation that he would step down from his role as CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald and sell all of his business interests if he is confirmed. Is Twitter blowing up?
No.
With happy birthday?
Not yet.
What are you Blue Thread or whatever, with the blue balls? What's the name of this other thing? What is it? Blue something? What is this other thing? Did you make the move?
Oh, Blue Sky.
Blue Sky. Blue sky.
No, I am.
Some CNBC people are making that move.
I'm pretty much addicted.
You are.
On the X.
You go.
I'm addicted.
I don't even know what it's called. I mean, along with my Truth Social account, I don't need anything other than X.
You can run an ad for that.
I do not have a Truth Social. I don't have an Instagram. If you see me on Instagram pushing NVIDIA, it's not me. Have you seen those? It's like whack-a-mole. It's like whack-a-mole.
I got one. I got it every other day. There's a new ad.
I know. They got real pictures of me. Pictures from my...
Oh, they got me selling gold now.
How right were you?
Tease will be next.
Coming up next on Squawk Pod, New York Governor Kathy Hochul has met with city officials about the Big Apple's path forward amid corruption charges, quid pro quo allegations, and resignations in the office of Mayor Eric Adams. New York City Comptroller Brad Lander was in that meeting with Governor Hochul, and he has his own vision for the future of America's largest city, one he's running on in the 2025 mayoral race, which has already begun.
If you want to get at public safety issues, if you want to get at mental health crisis, you want to get at gun violence, you want to get at retail theft, the things that are making New York less livable.
What does that mean, though, in terms of changing the laws?
About changing the immigration laws.
This is Squawk Pod from CNBC. Today with Joe Kernan and Andrew Ross Sorkin.
Stand by, Joe. His mic, cue.
Good morning, and welcome back to Squawk Box, live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. Kentucky Fried Chicken, KFC, is leaving Kentucky.
Can you believe that?
Does it matter? Not really. I guess it's branded.
Going to Texas?
Right. The fried chicken chain's U.S. headquarters are going to move from Louisville, Kentucky, to Plano, Texas. About 100 U.S. employees will be required to relocate over the next 6 months. It's part of owner Yum Brands' larger plan to have two corporate headquarters, one in Plano and the other in Irvine, California. KFC still plans to maintain corporate offices, though, in Louisville, and will build a new flagship restaurant in its former hometown. Separately, Yum is also asking its remote workforce, about 90 workers, to move to the campus wherever their work happens to be based, but to come back in.
We're going to talk about a hostage situation this morning, the hostage being the mayor of New York City. New York Governor Kathy Hochul meeting with New York City officials on Tuesday to discuss a path forward for the city leadership, which could potentially include removal of Mayor Eric Adams. Joining us right now, one attendee of that meeting, New York City Comptroller Brad Lander, who's also running for mayor against Adams this year. I called Adams a hostage. He is a hostage. That's what it is. Let's call it what it is.
Been done again and again and again. The Justice Department often defers prosecution in exchange for help with administration policy. Do you like controller or comptroller? I like controller.
I like controller, but my kids say, Dad, you control way too much already.
You do, and you're a control freak. But I like controller. I don't know why it's pronounced controller.
Job is to get things under control.
What's an MP? How does MP turn into an M?
It's the British. It's a British word that they did fake French on.
All right, he wants to get back to his hostage negotiation.
My hostage situation, which is, look, you had that article. You want to break out the article from the Journal?
Yeah.
This is a very interesting.
I also want to do the Post.
Okay, this is a very interesting situation.
Both Rupert Murdoch entities, Brad's favorite.
Okay, but this is a very interesting situation because we have a situation where the Justice Department has effectively decided to not prosecute the mayor for political purposes, to hopefully get his help with this immigration issue.
Hold that prosecution over his head.
That's why I called it a hostage situation.
Clear on Fox.
That's what it is. So. Now, Joe, you think that that's an okay way to do it?
No, I don't. I think it smells bad, but at the same time, I'm backing Mayor Adams, and I'm going to read you from Andy McCarthy, who also thinks Andrew McCarthy that it's a bad thing, but says. I'm not talking about whether his honor will politically survive the revolt of his fellow Democrats who were content for New York City to be governed by a mayor under corruption charges as long as he was defending lawless sanctuary policies, but are suddenly alarmed with corruption to the point of ejecting him because he's cooperating with Trump.
But let's be clear. What happened on Monday is that 4 deputy mayors that the mayor himself hired to run the city,
all
people that
Democrats,
supervise,
right. all
they didn't get those jobs as Democrats. Those jobs are because they know how to run city government.
They all hate Trump.
They run the sanitation department.
Right.
They run the fire department.
They all hate Trump.
These are people, I don't know if you know the 4 of them, they are not about politics. They are about delivering services to New Yorkers and running the city. There's a snowstorm tomorrow. That's their job. Right. They're responding to crises and
by the way,
emergencies.
for New York City leaders, right, in this moment, how screwed up is the city?
I mean, this
in
is
terms of just to be able to operate the city right now.
I mean, it's unprecedented. You've never had a leadership vacuum like 4 deputy mayors, and these are the ones that really supervise all the critical day-to-day agencies that serve New York.
Do you think that Hochul should kick him out of the role?
Well, I sent a letter to the mayor saying we need to see the contingency plan. What are you going to do to run city government? Are you able to deliver? We need to see what the judge does today. I hope Judge Ho won't take this corrupt hostage bargain.
Yeah, so what do you think happens? Do you think the judge might say we're not doing this?
Anyone else who might be ready to step in as mayor at this point? Is there
guy
anyone
at this table, maybe?
Yeah, someone nearby that could be.
This is a great city.
Not me and not Andrew, so I can only think of one.
I'm running for mayor because we need a more affordable and a safer and a better run New York City, and we need honest, effective leadership at City Hall. And this is not about ideology.
Would you enforce immigration policies of the Trump administration?
When someone is convicted of a serious or violent offense, our laws allow for cooperation and for them to be deported. But if we're talking about families, kids in school, folks who are, families, grandparents in the shelter system.
Would this, you okay with the sanctuary city designation for New York City?
That lets it be possible when someone wants to report domestic violence or be a witness in a crime.
So this could be a sanctuary city?
If you have not committed a serious or violent offense, then we want you to send your kid to school. If you see a crime, we want you to come to the precinct and report it.
That might mean that you would have to push back on anything that Homan said or anything Trump said.
Last week Elon Musk reached in and stole $80 million from New York City. So
Stole's a strong
sometimes
word.
It's not. We have a contract. They owe us the money. They paid us the money. They took it back.
Do you think that $80 million is okay to support migrants that are here illegally versus people in North Carolina and Tennessee and Kentucky?
It did not come from that emergency money, and
money's fungible. Money's fungible.
Congress
but you
allocated
see
and
that's what it looks
money.
like, though. We're taking care of people that are here illegally, and our own, we're not taking care of it. It doesn't matter whether it's the same money or not.
Of course it matters. Congress authorizes money for emergencies, and they did. Right. This was money that was authorized.
Let me ask you a different question, though. Do you think that there's a signal that needs to be sent in this state that illegal immigrants are not welcome? Or are you suggesting this is a place where illegal immigrants should come?
That's a good way to put it, Andrew.
The federal government, this state doesn't control the border. Federal government controls the border.
I understand that, but I think
these are people
you're deflecting.
I'm not deflecting. These are people who the federal government sent here. They came in, they registered at the border. That's a separate question than New York controls. They were then sent here largely by the federal government while awaiting their appointments.
The last administration.
And, it's the federal government. They were sent here by the federal government. New York says, look, if you're here, send your kids to school. Right. We will try to make sure you're not homeless
Let me ask you a separate question, which is, there has been a lot, especially in this city, I think you could say that safety and security is a genuine question.
A genuine question.
A genuine question.
I'm running for mayor because it's got to be a safer and better run city.
Okay. And when you hear the stories of some of the folks who have committed violent crimes in this city, on the subway, on the streets, what have you, one of the things you continue, we all read the papers and you find out that these people were violent offenders beforehand. And that there are rules and laws in this state that have shifted over the past several years that have made it a lot easier for these people to be back on the streets.
But look, one of the guys...
And my question is, how are you going to change that? Because for reasons that are inexplicable to me, this state has moved in a way to allow a lot of this to take place.
Look, one of the guys who committed a violent offense was someone that the NYPD had arrested, was in prison. ICE then deported him back, and that's why he was out of jail. And then he came back here again. So that speaks to ineffective border controls for certain. But our policies,
But do you think the policies in this state currently, not just the city, but the state, make sense?
Well, there's a lot of ways we got to make this city safer. I got a set of plans to end street homelessness for people with serious mental illness, so we don't have a mental health crisis.
I understand that, but when you talk to police and when you talk to prosecutors in this state, they say the laws are off the hook at this point.
No one that I talk to in law enforcement says that asylum seekers are committing a disproportionate share of crimes. Quite the opposite. So if you want to get at public safety issues, if you want to get at mental health crisis, you want to get at gun violence, you want to get at retail theft, the things that are making New York less livable, that's what I want to get at with smart crime fighting and public safety.
And what does that mean, though, in terms of changing the laws?
About changing the immigration laws.
Okay, but let's take the immigration laws off the table then for a second.
I thought that's what we...
well, I think there's an immigration law question, but also there's a separate question, which is what you would do with violent offenders of any sort.
I mean, look, there's a conversation right now about the discovery laws in New York, which got reformed a couple of years ago, and as a result,
do you think the reforms were the reforms were a mistake?
I think the discovery reforms are worth looking at because misdemeanors are getting prosecuted at a much lower rate than they were, and we got to do something.
What about bail reform? Bail reform.
Crimes went up everywhere across the country. I don't believe the bail reform in New York was what led to the spike. I think it was the mental health crisis. I think that there are some things in the discovery reform that should be fixed. And I think you just need to address the staffing crisis. And right now, the management crisis at the NYPD, caused by Eric Adams having a corrupt commissioner like he did. That's a big part of the problem. Now, I think
you think that's why there's as much crime in this city as there is?
Look, in the weeks that 3 months that Jesse Tisch has been commissioner, you're seeing crime coming down. Accountable leadership at the top, I think that matters a great deal. And again, that's why I wrote this
I think that if we had Jesse Tisch sitting here, she would tell you that it would make her life a lot easier if the laws were changed in this state.
And I think she would tell you, here are the things I've done to have an accountable force, to recruit
but
officers and to bring crime down.
You would not push, if you were the mayor, you would not be pushing for harsher penalties and bail reform to be rolled back in any way, shape, or form?
Well, I think there's some things we can do to have more flexibility for involuntary hospitalization for people with serious mental illness and then get them connected to housing and stability. I think there's reforms we can make on discovery that get the number of misdemeanors that are prosecuted back up. So sure, there are changes that are made, but I think the most important thing is accountable leadership. And that's why I think Commissioner Tisch is doing a good job. But that's why I think Eric Adams has to be held accountable, can't be a hostage to Donald Trump. He's got to work for New Yorkers. He's not focused on public safety right now. He's focused on the safety of just one person, and that's himself.
Brad, do you think that everybody who's here now illegally should be able to stay? And do you think that that sends the right message to anyone who's considering coming here illegally?
When their asylum cases are evaluated, fewer than 25% of people are found to have credible fear, and those that are not are sent back to the country they came from. But they're due a credible fear hearing, and
which could be 4 years from now.
And that doesn't have to be.
And they're totally lost.
If Donald Trump and Elon Musk, instead of destroying the federal government, will make sure people can get their credible fear hearing, then if they don't have credible fear, they're sent back.
We've seen the way your sort of method, that's what we have for the past 4 years, and this is the mess we're in, and you saw what happened.
My method is run in New York City
but
better.
What you just, but no, but what you just described does not. What you just described,
streets are safe.
What you just described has us in this mess right now, and you lost an election, pretty badly, and immigration was the way it's been handled.
What I am focused on every day is how New York City delivers services to its people to keep them safe, to make the housing more affordable. We got
I know we got to go, but I want to ask you just about Elon Musk and DOGE for a second.
Yeah.
Which is, can you get behind the idea that we should have, whether it's Elon Musk or some other DOGE, whatever, whether Elon Musk is part of it or not, that there should be a group of people looking for efficiencies at the sort of root level?
It's just that's not what's happening here. I absolutely agree with you.
Okay, so the question is, do you believe that there's a
efficiency?
Do you believe there's a
New York City, New York State, federal government?
Do you believe there's a way to create that efficiency without moving as fast as this group is and doing it in a more transparent way, if that's what you believe?
And with the goal of making services work better. That's what my office proposes every time. We propose this radical solution to getting repairs done in New York City public housing that wouldn't use bureaucracy, that would use technology, we can make government run much more efficiently in our housing, in public safety, and we've got to be bold about it. So that I agree with. It just has to be done.
If you're gonna run the city, what are you gonna do about the unions in the city and the cost that those unions create for the city?
I mean, look, we've got to reduce the cost of living, and that means reducing the cost of government services. Again,
But how are you going to do that? I mean, one of the things about this city is the unions control this city, whether it comes to trying to fix the subway system. Why are our costs 3 times what they are everywhere else?
You might ask Elon Musk for help to come in and look at some of the...
Look, what I proposed at the New York City Housing Authority is an app like Yelp or Uber.
Do you think
when
Mayor
a repair
Adams,
is done
does
in
Mayor Adams
someone's
survive?
building, you should be able to rate it on your phone.
Does Mayor
and
Adams
not throw in
survive,
the
do you think?
bureaucracy. I don't think he will be mayor next year.
Oh, well, but he'll have to. There'll be an election where he's defeated.
There will be an election where he's not reelected.
What's going to happen to Kathy Hochul?
That's, we got to get through this week. That's next year. I am.
You a Richie Torres fan? What's your?
Right now. I'm focused on making sure New York City has continuity of government, that people can count on the services they need every single day.
Brad, we love having you on the show.
Thank you. I love coming in.
Appreciate it.
Next on Squawk Pod, the stunning and quick expansion of executive authority in Donald Trump's second White House. We're joined by legal professor and a veteran of President George W. Bush's Patriot Act era, John Yoo.
But presidents have a broader view. So look at President Washington. He actually had to face an insurrection. This was people in Western Pennsylvania who didn't want to pay taxes on whiskey. The prosecutors had people up on charges, and President Washington said, drop them all, because it's for the good of the country. We have to, live as one nation.
And
it's time now for today's Aflac trivia question. Battle Creek Toasted Cornflake Company was founded on this date in 1906, but who was the founder? The answer when Squawk Box returns.
you're listening to Squawk Pod. Here's Andrew.
Now to the answer to today's Affleck trivia question. The Battle Creek Toasted Cornflake Company was founded on this date in 1906. Who was the founder? The answer, Will Keith Kellogg. Did you know that?
I thought it was Tony the Tiger. Myself, that would have been my guess.
I miss Tony the Tiger. Do people eat that stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Are you a big Tony the Tiger to this day?
If I let myself go, I would be. Yeah, Honey Nut Cheerios, Fruit Loops, Lucky Charms. You can see I can just rattle off my.
You won't be able
wishes.
to eat Lucky Charms anymore. RFK Jr. is not going to allow all the different colored things that are in that
Anything
Lucky Charms.
in moderation. Mr. Cherry Coke is 95 or 94 and worth $300 billion.
Tell that to the head of our new Health and Human Services.
No. He's like mainlining nicotine patches. I mean, he's got his own issues. It's do what I say, not what I do. I think. Did you see that? Wasn't that a nicotine?
Yeah, I've seen it all, but he's going to take out what is it? Seed oils?
Don't be negative.
Not into seed oils.
Don't be negative. You know who's in charge.
I'm not negative. It could be good to
You know
help
who's
things.
in charge.
You mean
the guy who just wished you a happy birthday
is in charge,
is
and
in charge.
he likes
People
McDonald's.
serve it.
Exactly.
Yeah, who doesn't? And Bloomberg's reporting that Elon Musk's social media company X is in talks to raise money from investors at a $44 billion valuation. Musk bought X, formerly known as Twitter, for the same price back in 2022. Talks for the new financing round are still ongoing, and the details could change, the report said, adding that the company could also abandon the talks. And you will never abandon X, will you?
I am addicted. I'm an addict. I scroll, doom scroll, whatever
You get news from it.
Get a lot of news from it.
You release some.
Occasionally, I don't post that much.
It's pure. It's poor. There are problems. It's not perfect.
I don't know if it's pure, but
It's pure in that whatever human nature is willing to put forth in the worst possible way and in the best possible way, you can see there, and you be the judge. That's all we ask. That's all we ask.
You have to have a little bit of a constitution, though, about what you're.
You do, but I don't need AP deciding what I'm able to see, which is what NPR or whatever. So I know it's your birthday, but I can't let you just Or 60 Minutes.
Come on.
Or 60 Minutes. Go ahead.
Oh my goodness, throwing
Okay.
right. It's the glass houses.
Our next guest says that President Trump's use of executive orders are unprecedented in terms of the sweeping scope and in the sheer number. Joining us now, John Yoo, UC Berkeley law professor who helped expand presidential authority while serving as an official in President George W. Bush's Justice Department. John, it's great to see you. I see you all the time. I've been watching you for years and years, all the way back to that horrible period back at the turn of the century. But I still can't believe you're at Berkeley. But I think it's nice. I think that's good. I think that you're like one of the DEI hires at Berkeley as a conservative. I think.
Hey, you're catching me right now in Austin, Texas, though, so I'm trying to get out while I can.
You're rubbing that all over. Yeah, you're feeling at home. John, and that intro sounded like it was almost a criticism of what President Trump is doing. I would imagine you'd make the case that anything that he's done executive power-wise at this point, it might be unprecedented in terms of size and scope, but you probably would say that he's totally entitled, and you probably are behind a lot of the stuff he's trying to do.
I think that's a fair point. I think he's going to win a lot of these current controversies, but there's some of his executive orders that are pushing the limits, and I do think he's going to get a more hostile reception in the courts. So, look, we're a little bit in shock, I think, right now, because we'd had 4 years of Joe Biden who wasn't this active. President Trump has come in, and I think what he's trying to do is restore energy to the executive, which is Alexander Hamilton's phrase about why we even have a presidency. So all these things that we've been talking about, DOGE, cutting spending, firing people, those are the areas where I think President Trump is really going to prevail, because those are all about the president running the executive branch. These are all people within his branch of government, and the courts and Congress especially now have been fairly deferential to the president there. The executive orders where he's going to run into resistance are where he's trying to change the rights of people outside the executive branch. So I'd say, for example, trying to end birthright citizenship is going to get a harder time in the courts. He may well lose that at the Supreme Court. Declaring that there's an invasion happening on the southern border where the military can respond to immigration and waive civilian immigration laws. That's going to run, I think, into trouble in the courts. But I think he's going to have a lot of success. And you're seeing it today. There are already courts that are pulling back from their initial attempts to stop it, looking at the spending accounts in the government, freezing spending temporarily, telling people that we may not need you to work at the government, take a buyout. There, I think the president he's kind of like the head of HR for the executive branch of government. There, I think he may ultimately prevail.
It's a beautiful system, isn't it? We've got all those district courts where you can shop your case around and find a judge that to your liking. But sooner or later, it gets to a point where, the adults are in charge. It's a beautiful system that we have. We were talking about that earlier. Eventually, we usually get it right. I want to get to something we've been talking about, and that is what's happening in New York with Mayor Adams. And even conservatives, Andrew McCarthy and others, think that smells kind of bad. There's a case being made in the Journal today that the Justice Department in the past has often deferred prosecution in exchange for companies changing their behavior and doing certain things. I don't know if that's the same as getting a politician or an elected official and having sort of a sword of Damocles hanging over Mayor Adams' head if he doesn't do what President Trump wants as far as immigration. Does this bother you? And then, Andrew, you got to use your. It's his birthday, and I'm going to let him have a shot at you after that. But you're perfectly fine with this arrangement we're seeing between Tom Homan and Mayor Adams and President Trump?
This is not just something that the Justice Department has been doing recently. This is something that President Washington did. So this tradition of presidents saying, okay, prosecutors, and look, I totally sympathize with the prosecutors here. I was a Justice Department official, too. I totally see an expert saying, we got him on the facts, we got him on the law, I want to prosecute. The Justice Department generally doesn't pull back and dismiss charges when they think they can win in court. But presidents have a broader view. So look at President Washington. He actually had to face an insurrection. This was people in Western Pennsylvania who didn't want to pay taxes on whiskey. That's why we still call it the Whiskey Rebellion. I'm originally from Pennsylvania. I know people in my home state don't ever want to pay taxes on booze, right? So there was a rebellion in Western Pennsylvania. Washington went out in person, led an army in person to put it down. The prosecutors had people up on charges, and President Washington said, drop them all, because it's for the good of the country. We have to, live as one nation. And so I'm ordering the charges to be dropped. Now, I'm not saying that's exactly what President Trump did here, but we've always recognized that presidents can say, even if you could prosecute these guys, we have to balance that against things which are more important, which are in the public interest. Now, your example of deferred prosecution with corporations, I don't think that's exactly the same, but it's the same idea, which is that the prosecutors, they're the experts. The Justice Department officials like me, we have a kind of tunnel vision, and we do have to defer ultimately to a president who has to see whether we got to balance that against other interests.
John, let me ask you maybe this way. We talk about lawfare. We talk about lawlessness in this country. We talk about nobody being above the law. All of these issues, which, frankly, I would argue President Trump did run on. Meaning he said he wanted to get rid of this idea of lawfare, of politicizing the law, and contended repeatedly and successfully that President Biden was engaged in lawfare, something that he didn't believe that this country should be engaged in. So part of the conundrum in this particular instance is that I think people look at this and say, he's playing politics. He's playing politics with the law. And I think one thing that's important to understand in this particular case is this was a grand jury that indicted effectively this mayor. I'm not making a comment on the mayor's guilt or innocence. I'm just suggesting that it was my fellow citizens, your fellow citizens, that decided that this was a worthy case. And therefore, what you have in this situation is a president that is using politics, I think, very directly. The good news is it's transparent what's happening here. But it raises all sorts of other questions, not necessarily constitutional questions, but just questions in the public mind's eye. And maybe it depends on your politics, but it raises those questions and whether that undermines the credibility of the Justice Department and just the entire system.
Well, I'm sure everybody said happy birthday. Happy birthday. I hope you guys have me back on again before your next birthday, by the way.
Yes.
But here's the way I would look at it. Here's the way I would look at it. I think there's a difference between policy and partisan politics. So I think the problem with the Biden prosecution of President Trump is that he was going after the guy who was running against him for president, trying to knock him off the ballot. That, I think, is Democrats versus Republicans. I totally agree with you. We don't want to see that in our prosecutions. I don't think that's what the Trump Justice Department or the Trump White House is doing here. Here's a Democratic mayor. And if you believe what the White House is saying, they want to let him off because they want him to help them achieve their overall policy goal of better immigration enforcement. That doesn't have to do with President Trump running for re-election. He can't, of course. It doesn't have to do with Republicans and Democrats. They're doing it for a policy reason. That's why I'm comparing it more to Washington's.
Do you think it would be better for the president
in his first term?
So, as you know, the lead prosecutor in the case who ultimately has resigned, who was a conservative, suggested that the right answer was for President Trump to pardon the mayor, which is to say, you know what, we're just going to take this off the table. This is not about anything else, but we're going to pardon the mayor. That would have been the sort of better approach to this situation, rather than to dismiss the case with prejudice, which then creates this even more. I mean, I've talked about it being almost a hostage situation, because the truth is that the mayor now has to do what the president wants. And if the mayor doesn't, it appears as if the president is suggesting that they will then prosecute this individual. Again, this is as political as it gets, right?
I think that's a fair point. Again, it's not political Republican versus Democrats. It's political in the sense of how does the federal government actually make sure Mayor Adams keeps his word? So if you give him a pardon, what happens if Mayor Adams says, I'm not going to help you with immigration anymore? So it's very much actually like what Joe was saying with the deferred prosecutions with corporations. It's the same idea.
No, I understand that, John, but this is an elected official. But and this goes now to a federal versus state system, right? The mayor was elected to represent the people of New York, right? He is supposed to answer ultimately to the people of New York. And in this instance, given this sort of very unusual circumstance, he has to answer not to those people. He has to answer to one person, and that is the President of the United States. And that's something we have not had in this country in terms of how we've wanted to structure it versus a kingdom or something else.
Look, this is not unusual in the sense that the federal government is trying to get states and cities that are resisting federal priorities. Like, this is something, as you said, this is a federal state issue. This is not this prosecution, but federal government has used funding cutoffs. They've used carrots and sticks, like trying to get states and cities to adopt
Sure, but most of them don't have the. I agree with you. Look, the federal government holds lots of states hostage for lots of things. They typically do not hold the mayor hostage and with the possibility of sending that person to jail. That's the difference.
Yeah, look, if I had my druthers, I wouldn't have the federal government going around prosecuting mayors. What they should do, and I think this is what's going to happen in your city, is they're going to say, we don't think this mayor is acting in good faith here, or he was taking bribes from Turkey there. You have elections, you have governors, you have a political system that can hold Mayor Adams accountable. And maybe it shouldn't be the job of the federal government to police all the mayors in the country and hold this sort of Damocles over all of them. But that's the way it is now with all these very aggressive U.S. attorneys. So maybe it might be better if they withdraw altogether from policing mayors.
That was my point, too, that asking, the quid pro quo. In this case, the quo was immigration, and that's not getting rid of your political opponent. But you know what, John? You may be back at some point in the future where it's not about immigration or some high-minded, it might be President Trump it might be pure lawfare. Couldn't you see him going after someone like Liz Cheney? I mean, that may be down the road. Maybe she did destroy, I don't know. I don't know the details of the case, but it may not be something that's for the, I could see it happening where it's just like the Biden Justice Department. You know what I mean, Andrew? That could be coming with Pam Bondi. I wouldn't. Do you think, John? I mean, I think we may need to have you back.
I hope we never see that day, and I would expect that the Attorney General will resign.
But all right, John, it was great having you on, and even though when are you going back to Berkeley? You'll be welcome with open arms, I'm sure. We have a special delivery this morning for Andrew's birthday. Donuts from Daily Provisions. And I've got my eye. You know what?
We got to say a very special thank you to Danny Meyer, by the way.
Is that Daily Provisions?
That is Daily. And Danny sent me a very nice note.
Very nice.
With these donuts, knowing that I am a donut lover, and in particular a Cruella fan. And so these are some of my favorites.
Those are what does that mean, Cruella?
This is, I don't know, it's, my God, it's just amazing. There's some good chocolate ones here, too.
I'm going to come over. And you know what? I'm going to have it because I'm way down. I've got some wiggle room.
You got some wiggle room?
In terms of gaining a few pounds back.
Thank you, Danny.
I'll be back to my old weight soon.
And that's the pod for today, this February 19th. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernan, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin every weekday morning on CNBC, beginning at 6 Eastern.
Before we continue, we just need to explain.
That's so funny.
The donut situation. So these are crullers.
Crullers.
And we should thank Danny Meyer again for sending them over here.
Cruella
is not Cruella.
She eats donuts made out of Dalmatians.
But a cruller, by the way, it's not a flavor. So this is a chocolate one. These are all crullers.
Crullers.
Yes.
Crullers.
It's not cruel. It's not cruel.
They're not cruel and it's not cruel.
To eat a donut.
They are crullers, and I don't know what the difference is, but I like them.
But I like them. They're really great. I'm sorry to say.
It's nice.
I'm not sorry to say. I'm very happy to say happy
nice
birthday.
To be thought of you.
To myself.
Get the best of our show anytime you want, right on the go in this podcast. Follow Squawk Pod wherever you like to listen. Thank you. We'll meet you right back here tomorrow.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.